percentage of the population are the Taliban?
It's not a very large. It's not a very large percentage, but they are extremely powerful and very strong. And what they do is browbeat people into submission. So they will occupy a village and force people to basically abide by their dictates. And when you look at that, most that is read as support for Taliban. Whereas had they not been doing this with force, that support wouldn't be there. But having said that, there is also support building as far, when the US decides to attack a house with these unmanned drones, definitely it creates support for the Taliban. And that's the contradiction that we are in. On the one hand, when the Taliban start to use their strong arm tactics, they of course lose support. But when that happens, it's negated by the U.S. attacks, etc.
So the U.S. attacks, in effect, support a minority of the population, which is Taliban.
I would say so.
Was your question what percent of the Afghans are Taliban, or what percent of the Talibans in Pakistan or Afghanistan?
The percentage of the Taliban in Afghanistan and in Pakistan.
What I've heard from journalists and others that are covering the territory, gentlemen here may know better, is that my understanding the majority of the Taliban are in Afghanistan. There's certainly, they use the bases in Pakistan and go back and forth.
But how many of them?
I think an estimate is 40,000.
Yeah.
That's an estimate. I don't think.
But that's not all fighters.
Yeah.
We have to be clear about that. The Taliban might, and these are loosey-goosey numbers, okay? So don't hold me to them. But they might be able to field 10,000 fighters on any given time of the potential 30 or 40,000 that are there, because they also have to have support elements. The big shift is being that the Taliban are not, the majority are no longer in Pakistan, the majority are now within Afghanistan. They have been setting up long-term logistics and support bases. That's not quite the caches, I think would be a better term. And certainly over time, one of the interesting patterns we saw was the acquisition of motorcycles. Look at pictures of the borders of Afghanistan and Pakistan. The primary means of transport are two-wheeled vehicles. And you can take a motorcycle an awfully long way. You can carry two people on it and carry a lot of equipment. And you can go a long way with a very small tank of gas, or diesel as the case may be. So they've certainly been acquiring these things. We know of at least 5,000 motorcycles that have simply dropped off the face of the planet. This is a few years ago. They have been acquiring the logistical ability to engage rapidly Western forces which are not that mobile. That shift of physical numbers into Afghanistan is also indicative of the fact that the Western armies, with their Afghan allies, are losing more and more control of the physical territory. Because if the if the Taliban can operate inside Afghanistan with relative impunity, that's a relative thing, that means that they're feeling pretty confident and they have the resources within the country to do it. And they're not having to cross the border back to Pakistan. Not to say that there isn't a flow of arms and weapons and replacements, etc.
One thing I'd add to this is I don't think this is a situation like Vietnam where the Viet Cong and the anti-American fighters more or less had the hearts and minds of most or lots of Vietnam. I don't think the Taliban have the hearts and minds of the Afghans either, most of them. I think most Afghans would tell you a plague on all their houses. From the central government to the Taliban to the foreign forces, they feel everyone is just out to carve them up. And they want a solution so badly, but it's not like the Taliban, again, outside of some rural areas, have some great popular
shifting
support.
Loyalties, like every day, you can take one side or the other. The population can either be supportive or not of the Taliban.
I think
Just shifting over time.
whatever support there is growing for the Taliban now, I think is very similar to what it was when the Taliban first came to power. There's now increasingly such warlordism, such chaos, such criminality, such drug trade, and all the consequences of the drug trade, that people were saying, well, geez, maybe it was better when at least there was, even if it was Taliban law and order, maybe it was better with some law and order, which is what gave rise to the Taliban in the first place, because there was such criminality. People were willing to accept almost anything that would stop it.
I think we should add another element to this discussion, and this is the issue of Kashmir, because I think that is also fueling the support for Taliban and for jihad generally. And I think Obama, and in Pakistan, yeah. And I think Obama had it right initially when he first appointed, I forget this guy's name, an ex-CIA man. Sorry?
Holbrooke.
No, not Holbrooke. An older, sorry? No. This is an ex-CIA guy who's familiar with South Asia, and he was appointed, and he actually came up with this plan that it's Kashmir that needs to be given attention to, and if you resolve that, much of the problem in rest of northern Pakistan and Afghanistan will get resolved. And I think he was right. But once this issue came on the table, Indians generally were very upset by it, and they were the ones who actually pushed it off the table. In fact, when even Holbrooke, when he was appointed, there was an element in there where India also, or Kashmir through India, was also getting involved into his mandate. But that was also pushed aside. So I do think Obama, if he's serious about resolution of this problem in South Asia and Central Asia, or West Asia, I should say, he should also look at this whole issue of Kashmir, because I do think it is a phenomenally serious issue that needs to be resolved for that area to actually become more peaceful.
Donate today and receive a new documentary film available to members of the Real News Network. The History of the National Security State with legendary author Gore Vidal. Bonus features of the DVD include an in-depth response to Vidal from ex-CIA analyst Ray McGovern, who served under 7 U.S. presidents, an exclusive interview with Colin Powell's former Chief of Staff Larry Wilkerson, and an insightful interview with oil policy analyst Antonia Juhas.
The news magazine of the screen. Living glimpses of history in the making.
Hollywood and Washington, there's a symbiotic relationship. They both deal with illusions. Reality doesn't often play much of a part. I think I saw through the myth of the Cold War almost from the beginning. I was a Washington political kid from a political family. Roosevelt first had radio because he had this great speaking voice and everyone liked to hear. Truman proceeded to break every arrangement that Roosevelt had set up for a peaceful coexistence. And Truman thought that it would be a good idea. Why not just stay armed all the time? And then he devised the national security state. You've got to go up and swear allegiance to the United States or else you're a commie. I mean, we had imported fascism. We get Dwight Eisenhower, who said that we have this great military industrial complex. It is a dangerous thing. And he said this is going to change everything. And the way our country's governed is going to change us politically. Along comes Jack Kennedy, who wanted to make his mark, believed in the Cold War. But he said, in this kind of politics, it is the appearance of things that matters. I think everybody should take a sober look at the world about us. The national security state still exists, only it isn't communism anymore, it's terrorism. This is the most serious thing that has happened in the history of the United States. Knowledge is power. We need an honest news system.
We need the Real News.
This is the sort of thing we can build right now without anyone else's permission from the government or from the business community. It's the power's in our hands.
If we're not going to sleepwalk into more wars, we think we need to start with a television news network that won't bow to pressure and has the courage to seek facts. And that means independent economics And that's why we need you.
Make a tax-deductible donation now of at least $10 a month or a one-time give of at least $75. As a thank you for your support, we will send you the new documentary film, The History of the National Security State.